grateful because of that journey, and it has taken me to the point where that's what I want to do. And that's what I want. I want to do it all along. I want to travel, to set up, not just food. When I think of a food hub, I don't just think of food. You know what I'm saying? When I say Farm for Justice, I don't just think of food. I think of this aspect of culture, this aspect of education, all these components that contribute and make civilization what it is. That's what I think of when I think of farming, when I think of these things. So, and it takes me right back to what I went to school for. All things in the beginning was to educate, and all the decisions that were made before was to educate, and there's two things that we cannot go out without in society: is a teacher and a farmer. You have to have those. Somebody got to teach you how to tie your shoes. So, and you're gonna have to eat. From the simplest things, you're gonna have to have those two things. My teacher was in the grad program, and he actually spoke with me and tried to really convince me to go to ECU for theater. But I just couldn't do that. I wasn't in love with it that much to wear the tights and do the dancing and all that stuff like that. And then it was history. Because I always wanted history. I always had a passion for the past, because I always had a clear understanding of this being the road that I have to continue to blaze. Okay, now it has been blazed, the path has been blazed all the way up to this point of the present, and now I have a contribution I have to make to these things. So I had a love for that history of how things came to be. I settled with English. I settled with English because I did poetry, I did creative writing, I did these things, and through that, I said, hey, I can write history this way. I don't have to study history and write and rewrite, what happened in history. I could write history through creative writing and things of that sort. So that's the avenue I took, all the way into becoming president of English Honor Society, doing all the things, being for the Fine Arts magazine from the university, all these things, put these things together, trying to piecemeal what we're now, calling justice, this. And so that kind of led me to the dietary law. And through that dietary law, I learned how disobedient we were through ignorance. And because I wanted to be whole in soul and in mind, the body kind of naturally came into this. And I was introduced to it, and after graduating, started to grow food. I just had a pregnant wife, and I wanted to give her the best as possible so she can bring forth the best, And so I began to grow food out my backyard. I knew nothing. I didn't know synthetic. I didn't know organic. I didn't know anything, Only thing so I thought I was doing my thing with my Miracle Grow adding it in, and then but I was growing. But we got a lot of good food out of it. A lot of people ate. The next, it was natural because I had that, going back to that search for the real history, because I had I knew how to do research. So I began to research on methods in which made sense to me. I didn't know organic or any of these things, and I ran across something called permaculture. And I began to grow food in the lasagna method. And in my backyard, and I had a 20 by 24 plot, and with beds in it that I did no-till method in. And we began to grow food out of this. And out of that manifestation, I fed my family, I fed my neighbors, I fed my grandparents, I fed my mother. So many people ate out of this little bitty area. And it was just mind-blowing to me, because I always used the example of how much food McDonald's store away, how much food all these restaurants store away that kind of contribute to our problem of malnutrition and our problem of starvation. We have people starving, we're throwing away food. We have people homeless, and we have homes that are abandoned, and we have apartments that are empty. We kind of contribute, we create this type of paradigm for ourselves. But when I began to grow food and saw that how much came out of this little plot, it really put in perspective how much it took to reverse these things that cause our discomforts to a level of non-productiveness. And so a friend of mine came to me and told me about, he saw my farm at the house, and he told me about community garden network that was happening on the west side of town. And the west side of town is a town where my grandmother lived when I was a child, and this is poverty stricken, what people call food desert. All these things happen due to that, and when that happened, I knew I wanted to do something in that part of town. I had a heart there. By the time I left, I had a garden. They had gave me a garden from the network, and we walked around this community. And before, in the midst of that 7 days, we asked them, different questions. We didn't know that this is called a survey, a neighborhood assessment. We didn't know these things. We were just trying to get the people to come out, support the garden, know it's there, know it's for them, things of that sort. Not even knowing that they didn't know. But what we found out was that we had a strong case of, for lack of a better term, poverty pimps coming into the community, creating these type of things such as gardens or whatever they have money to create, and not asking the neighborhood anything, not even letting them know that. So when we talk to people, they would say, "Hey, we know the garden's back there, but that's not for us." Or they say, "I didn't even know a garden was back there." Or they'll say, "Oh, I've seen it, but we've never been invited," or anything like that. So they had no investment and didn't see the importance of this. They didn't know what a food desert was. So the first thing is to invite them in. So we had them come out, and we had about over 200 people show up. In my first 7 days in the network, we had about 200 people show up, and they brought their families. And the west side of town has one of the highest rates of broken homes on the East Coast. So when I looked out and I saw families together, I knew this is something we had to continue to do. And this is that justice that I was looking for way back when I was just a little 16-year-old boy writing poems. We continued that, and the next year, the following spring, we pulled about 2,500 pounds of vegetables out of that same farm, out of that same garden there. That continued on to me becoming a director of the network and things of that sort. That continued on to us turning this aspect, because once I became director of what we now call Cultivate Greenville, the vision had to change, because it had been a lot of people seeing that, hey, this is qualified as a food desert, we can get money that way, let's just put them in, dump these things, say that we're doing these things. It doesn't matter what it really does, but we just can show that we're doing something. So I said, we must make this sustainable, self-sustainable. We must have some self-sustainable component. And I know that we can't do this overnight, but the steps start today. So this got me into urban farming. And actually, instead of giving away these vegetables to food banks and to soup kitchens and to food drives and things of that sort, we were like, hey, let's allow people to see the value of the food and invest in it and sell it to them. So we began to sell them these aspects, and from that, we sold over 2,000 pounds this year of food to local communities, to local CSAs, and to restaurants. It has brought, we took the youth that were in the neighborhood idle, and they would come out and they would work on the farm, do things that everyone said that they would not do, but they not only did it, but they found a love for it, and to the point where the justice they lacked in their lives, they connected with it through the land again. And now they call themselves OGs, organic gardeners, and things like that sort. So we're taking little lingos that we found through other videos and things of that sort, and we're kind of adopting it for ourselves to give it a, what am I trying to say? To give it a level of connectability, to make it intimate, to make it real to them in their neighborhoods where there is no access to healthy foods. The only thing you have access to is malt liquor, Little Debbie cakes, quarter waters, which is nothing but little buckets of Kool-Aid packed in sugar. All these things that contribute to the problems we have in that community, which is hypertension, high blood pressure, heart disease, all these things in which I call self-inflicted diseases, from the simple fact that we can avoid them with habits. Through our habits, we can avoid these type of sicknesses, but through the lack of that knowledge, we volunteer ourselves for them. So our root of what we have done and our root of what we have joined hands in is literally not just to farm, but to farm in the capacity of education, and to not see them as two different entities. To be just as intimate with our neighbor as we are with the food that we take in, and to share that relationship in a capacity in which will breed itself over and over again till we find our families together again, till we find our neighbors knowing each other. This is the first time that I can remember that it is convenient for you not to know your neighbor. In the past, it was dangerous for you not to know your neighbor. You had to know them because when you left, somebody had to feed the chickens. You had to know from one variety to the next. And so we're taking these aspects and we're connecting up with people, with like-minded individuals who share this same vision. My father was asking me, because his whole thing is be your own man, work for yourself, things like, and that's what he's done all his life, And so he doesn't like collaborating at all. And I'm like, okay, you don't just totally write it off, but at the same time, we know the essentialness of collaboration, so I can't like take on his perception, but at the same time, there's a lesson that his suffrage has taught, and I have to take that. And
don't give all of yourself away.
Right. The whole thing was, hey, listen, you have to collaborate. You have to give yourself away in certain places, but you have to have something that you're working on for yourself. When Maurice came on Friday, we spent literally 12 hours together. I would say 9, maybe 7 or 8 of those hours, just me and him. And he was just kind of shining the light on me, like they said, okay, now it's time for you to see yourself, type deal. And then I was talking with Celeste, and it was the same thing, shining a light on me, like, okay, Jason, now it's time for you to see yourself, because you see credit in all these institutions that are set up around you that you have contributed to overwhelmingly, but you don't see any credentials in yourself.